So the Mandalorian is obviously a very skilled bounty hunter. Just look at him. He's covered in Beskar. He's got his rifle. He's got his blaster. He's got flamethrowers and grapple lines, jetpacks. Super awesome. Um, but how powerful is he? So I just went through chapter 1 through 16 of the Mandalorian. Um, so let's just go through a bunch of feats throughout there. So in chapter 1, super impressive. He and IG-11 take on a whole bunch of like random thugs, basically. Um, I don't know how many there are, but there are like dozens of them, and he's just taking them out left and right. Um, and then at one point he like shoots his grapple line, spins the thing, spins this turret thing, goes up and shoots it. You've seen it, you know what it is. Super awesome. I love that. And then of course throughout the show he's just pulling out his blaster super fast and shooting. He does it right after he goes in to meet Baby Yoda or Grogu. He does it again in chapter 5 against, I forget the guy's name, is the ex-military guy. He does it just so many times. It's awesome to see every time he does it. And in fact, before then, I was like, oh, guns are kind of boring. I prefer swords. But after The Mandalorian, I was like, oh, guns are pretty cool. And I got a Nerf gun, and yeah, that was fun to play with. Yeah, before then, I would have been like, Nerf guns, they're cool, but I prefer swords. But then, yeah, I like Nerf guns now. They're super fun. I still only have one, and I rarely play with it with other people, but I kind of like throwing things up and then just pulling it out really fast and shooting it. Anyways, enough about me and Nerf guns. The Mandalorian, not only does he do that, but what's something he does in Chapter 2? He takes on Jawas and a Mudhorn. Jawa is less impressive, but a Mudhorn is very impressive. Although he had help from Grogu, who lifted it up, it's still very impressive that he was able to take on the Mudhorn, especially after it got a surprise attack on him. The fight was very well done. He kind of used all of his options, kind of pulled out his knife at the very end as a last resort, and turns out that was the way to kill it. So good job there. But then in chapter 3, he does something more impressive. He goes into an imperial fortress, not fortress. What's the word? Imperial hideout, I guess. Yeah, imperial hideout. He goes into this imperial hideout and takes on a ton of stormtroopers, uses a bunch of whistling birds, but other than that, he does it with his perfectly replenishable weapons. Whistling birds are expensive, but blasters, punches, electricity from his Ambin sniper rifle, flamethrowers, all that not so expensive. So he can just replenish those, is what I'm trying to say. So takes out those hideouts. Then the bounty hunters attack after he after he leaves with Grogu. Which, by the way, wouldn't it be hilarious if there's just some random 50-year-old walking by, and all of their beepers went out and they all looked outside and there was just some 50-year-old, all their fobs have is that he's 50 years old, which means every single 50-year-old will react or will get the reaction from the fob. There's gotta be at least a few 50-year-olds coming and going. So I don't know. That whole scene where they all come out doesn't make much sense. But anyways, the point is, he takes on a good portion of them before he's finally basically ran out of options, and then the rest of the Mandalorians show up and they destroy them easily. But after that, of course, he goes on to chapter 4, where he takes on a bunch of weird raider monsters, and then ATST. So that was cool to see. I don't think that's his most important feat, but it was still cool to see. Then you've got his feats in chapter 5, where he takes on a sniper, which was more so just knowing when to shoot a flare, moving quickly on a speeder bike, which, by the way, speeder bikes are awesome. Just cool to see him, I don't know, moving towards a sniper and using flares efficiently. He also takes on, I forget the guy's name, Toro something or whatever, Toro Calican, I think. I forgot his name. But that guy, he has this thing where he shoots the flare behind his head or something, and then shoots the guy from the side. That was cool, but not his most impressive feat. Then there is chapter 6, where he takes on, and this is one of the coolest episodes, at least in terms of showing off his power. is he takes on a whole bunch of like New Republic security guards, which is just awesome. Demonstrates his skill, his speed, his use of his variety of weapons. I think one of the coolest parts about his fighting style is he incorporates all of his weapons into it. Like he knows when to use his grapple hook, his flamethrower, his blaster. Um, I think he should use his rifle more personally, for melee stuff. It's cool as a rifle, but I think it's even cooler as a shock baton and as a just a normal hitting thing. Oh, that reminds me. One thing I forgot to mention in chapter 2 is he takes on the Trandoshans. There's just a couple Trandoshans that attack him, and he uses his rifle as like a basically like a staff, and then also as a shock baton, and then also as a sniper rifle. Not so much a sniper rifle, just he shoots the guy in the back as the guy runs towards Grogu. So that was cool to see. But anyways, back to chapter 6. After that, he takes on a New Republic droid from inside a prison using his grapple hook. That was awesome. Shows ingenuity, shows a knowledge of mechanics, shows a just I don't know, just shows his skill as a bounty hunter of getting out of tricky situations. Then after that, he shows his tactical ability as he totally just like go he instead of going and trying to catch up to the what are they called? I think they're bounty hunters. He instead of trying to catch up to the bounty hunters and take them all on like all at once, he goes, turns off the lights, separates them, and then takes them on one by one, in just a super scary, efficient, awesome Mandalorian way. And then the only one he kills is the droid, because of course he hates droids, which I thought was an awesome detail. But after chapter 6, you get on to chapter 7 where he takes on a bunch of stormtroopers, and that's about it. And then in chapter 8, or does he take? No, he takes on stormtroopers in chapter 8. Chapter 7 starts there and ends there. So it's mostly just them traveling. He doesn't really fight anyone. He does fight those like weird winged gargoyle things at night, and it's super confusing. I'd have to rewatch it to kind of see exactly what he does. I think Cara Dune is the only one who takes one out, but I think he fends one off. I might be wrong about that. You'd have to rewatch that. So I don't think that's his most impressive feat, or one of his most impressive feats, anyways. But then in chapter 8, he takes on a bunch of stormtroopers, which is cool to see. Again, he goes to the big gun, picks it up, and starts shooting. He loses to Moff Gideon, kind of, which was a super funny scene, and then a super boom realization. I don't know how to. Words are failing me. I prefer to speak with messages, but sadly, that's not possible yet. Anyways, he turns towards him with the giant gun. You see Moff Gideon's tiny little gun, but then you see Moff Gideon aim for the power pack, and it's like, oh no, realization, and then boom, and then he's almost killed, but then he gets his helmet taken off, Grogu deflects the fire, all that stuff. He doesn't do much fighting until the very end when he takes out this TIE fighter, which I think, again, shows his ingenuity and his determination to, like, he never gives up. He's stuck in prison. He's like, oh well. No, he's not like, oh well. He's like, no, I'm going to get out. And then he thinks of a way to get out and does it. Against a TIE fighter, he's not like, this is an entire starfighter. How am I going to take this out? No, he's like, I'm going to meet that thing in the air and take it out, like, with, like, close quarter. Like, he's going to stick a bomb to it and blow it up. Super awesome to see. Then we move on to chapter 9, and this is, I think, his most impressive feat, is killing a crate dragon. Not just any crate dragon. That crate dragon was massive. Like, that's probably the oldest crate dragon in Tatooine for like maybe a millennia. I don't know how big crate dragons usually get, but that one in episode 4 is way smaller. So that was very impressive. The way he did it, again, mostly it doesn't really demonstrate any like special powers or significant skill. It just demonstrates his ingenuity, his boldness, and his bravery. Really, his determination. So that was awesome to see all that. Then you move on to chapter 10, and you see him fight a spider. He doesn't really have a chance to show any ingenuity. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like that one that much. He doesn't do much. He does fight the spiders, but he doesn't win. The New Republic does. Then there's chapter, what is it called? Chapter 11, where he takes on a bunch of stormtroopers. Again, this time he has the help of other Mandalorians. So it's kind of like, well, it's hard to judge his skill in that considering he had help. Um, so it's kind of hard to tell how much that help affected it. But again, he's just showing off his skill. Um, there's a lot of time for him to do that. Not everyone is going to be his most important feat. Um, then there's in chapter 12, he takes on even more stormtroopers. He shows off his piloting skills. Actually, this is one thing I forgot to mention about chapter 10, is he shows off his piloting skills in that too against the New Republic. Even though he crashes, that was some very impressive and, dare I say it, bold and like, how would you describe this? Um, it's it's everything I've been saying before. He's got ingenuity and he's bold and brave. He's determined to win and he's going to try things to do that without hesitation. And he uses his weapons very well because of that. He's probably got a lot of experimentation with using all of his various weapons, and he just knows the way around his weapons. He's very comfortable with them. He's good at coming up with the new ways to use them, which is awesome. I love seeing it. Um, he shows this again. He shows off more awesome piloting in chapter 12, and also a bunch of just infiltrating stormtrooper hideouts again, which seems to be his specialty, as we'll see in chapter 16. Then there is chapter 15 where he, all he really does is, he takes on Ahsoka. I mean, sure, he would have lost after a few more seconds, but he did very well in that. It shows his quick reflexes and it also shows his strength and the fact that he was able to he was able to catch Ahsoka in a grapple line. It again shows his comfortableness with his weapons and how he is able to use them very quickly. But I think that mostly showed his reflexes when Ahsoka attacked and he quickly brought up his arms and protected himself with his van braces, which is a very effective strategy. Like, good luck getting through like that. That's a difficult guard to break through. Yeah. But anyways, then he also takes on that like ex-military guy, which is cool to see. More so just shows his calmness, his quick draw. That's a huge thing for him, is his quick draw. It's super awesome to see all that. He can aim really quickly. I'm guessing his gun is like hooked up to his visor, so he's got like a targeting system in there. So he can just quickly pick up his gun. Maybe it senses his hand on it and activates a targeting system so he can see what he's shooting at. That would make sense. But even with that, it still shows a lot of skill. And actually, that would explain why he didn't hit his targets as well in chapter 15 when wearing the Stormtrooper armor. Which could be just a worse visor and a worse blaster, but it could also be that the visor is worse because it doesn't have that targeting system connected to his blaster. So that's an interesting thought I just had. Then there's chapter, what is it? I just did 13, 14. Chapter 14 is on Tython, and I think this one, he was a bit off his game. He was probably pretty distracted by Grogu being up at the Seeing Stone. I don't know. That's a decent explanation for it. But I think the real reason is because they wanted to shine a spotlight directly on Boba Fett, which worked very well. Satisfied so many fans without making Boba Fett ridiculous, which I'm very glad about. But I don't know. He didn't seem very skilled in that. Part of that is just the open terrain combined with the numerous amount of stormtroopers. Like, he couldn't really use his grapple line. He couldn't really use his flamethrower. He does better in tighter spaces. Not as tight as like right next to the person, like when he fought Cara Dune, which is something I forgot to mention. But he does better in like mid-range, like in hallways, like in chapter 6 against all those New Republic droids and the bounty hunters. So yeah, he doesn't do very well in just straight up flat plains, and that's usually because he's outgunned, I suppose. He would do pretty well actually in that against just one person because he's got a quick draw. So I guess that's just a advantage for his opponents rather than a disadvantage for himself. But anyways, moving on to chapter 15, he goes on with Mayfeld, and you kind of see his skill without his suit, which is still very impressive, especially his um, non-blaster skills and like his physical combat skills, but he's definitely less precise with his blaster, and definitely not as tough, obviously, because he doesn't have Beskar armor. He's got Plastoid armor. But he's still very skilled. He's still very determined, and he doesn't have as many weapons at his disposal, so he's got less opportunity to show his clever thinking and his comfortableness with weapons. But he still shows off some skill. Then you move on to chapter 16, where again, he shows off just his ability to take out troopers pretty quickly. Then he takes on this dark trooper. He tries everything in the book until, actually, he literally tries everything. Like, well, everything except his grapple line, but that would be stupid to try anyways. So it kind of shows, even against an opponent like a dark trooper who's got basically no weaknesses, he's very good at just trying thing after thing and never giving up, until he wins, which is it just shows that he's got a warrior spirit, which awesome to see. But then there's his fight with Moff Gideon, which another cool fight. You get to see his spear skills. As of yet, he's not extremely skilled with a spear or a lightsaber or anything, but that could change in the future, and I would actually like to see that change, with him probably using the darksaber frequently and maybe even using the spear frequently if the darksaber gets taken away or something, or maybe both, or maybe depending on the situation. There's a lot of melee combat things that he could learn, just because of his new weapons that he's getting, his fine additions to his collection. But he's not super good at using them yet. He's definitely not bad. He's well-rounded. He's a well-rounded fighter, but he doesn't have very much skill with weapons that he's not used to, which makes a lot of sense. I think he's more well-rounded than most fighters, which I guess makes sense. He's a Mandalorian, but even so, he's still very, very good at the weapons specifically with the weapons that he already has. Except for the jetpack. He didn't have a jetpack for a while, but he got the jetpack and he uses it very well. Not as well as like Bo-Katan and that one Mandalorian. They tend to use those better, but he uses it about as well, or maybe even better than Boba Fett. I would say better than Boba Fett. Boba Fett's the guy who decided to fly right next to a melee fighting, that being Luke Skywalker, with his jetpack rather than shoot from a distance. So I think he uses it better than Mando, or better than Boba. He is Mando. Technically, Boba. There's a lot of Mandos. He is Din Djarin. He's a Mando. He's the Mando to us. You know what I mean? That's how powerful Mando is. Yeah, just a very skilled warrior, very comfortable with his weapons. He's got a lot of variety. He's got a lot of ingenuity and a lot of determination and bravery.